Welcome back to another episode of the Varsity Voices, where high school sports and the Chicago Catholic League take center stage. Today, we're flipping the format and handing the mic, or either the hot seat, to Dan for our new special segment that we're calling Dear Dan. This is where I throw out the questions, raw, real, sometimes ridiculous, and Dan gives it to us straight. You'll hear what he really thinks. No scripts, no filters, no fluff, no time limits. Just Dan doing what Dan does best and calling it how he sees it.
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.
So, Dan, are you ready for the inaugural episode of Dear Dan?
I'm ready. Bring it on, Joe. Ready to go. I'm
All
6'1",
right,
by the way. Is that the first question? How tall are you?
How tall are you? How much do you weigh? Yeah, right. All right, so everyone settle in, and let's open up the mailbag, Dan, and here we go.
All right. That's a big, heavy steel bag.
All right, so Dear Dan, is the NIL helping or hurting high school sports right now?
I think right now it's probably indifferent because it's so few. I think potentially it's going to hurt more than it helps. I think because there's going to be a lot of egos in play, and I think there's going to come a time when players or families think that their student athlete probably is worthy of an NIL figure when they probably aren't in a lot of cases. I think education is the key, because like we've said, it's coming, whether we like it or not. It's here, whether we like it or not. But I think education is going to have to be a key. If it can work out to be like the 21st century summer job, so to speak, for student athletes, I think that'd be great. If it could work itself out like that, where it takes the place of having to go, work at a fast food place or wash cars or whatever it might be. I think that's a win if it starts to get where it's people are more concerned about NIL than they are about, the day-to-day blocking and tackling, so to speak, and that then it becomes a problem. I think if it gets in the way of the team, becomes a distraction, then it's a problem, and that's what I'm worried about. So currently, I think the impact is minimal, but I think it's got a chance to be pretty harmful for high school sports.
Okay, all right, good. All right, let's look. Here we go.
Okay.
All right, so Dear Dan, how do you feel about high school teams traveling out of state to get some national exposure?
I feel good about that. I think that's kind of an exciting development. I think if you've got the team for it, I think that it makes a lot of sense. I know that in the past and in the past several years, the teams have had to travel out of state to get games because of scheduling issues in Illinois and everywhere else. So it's been done out of necessity. I think if you could do that out of less than necessity, but more because, hey, we want to do it, and promotion, I think that's pretty exciting for the players. I think that it opens a lot of doors. I think there's some exposure things there that will help teams. I think if you see that, by some of the upper echelon teams, I think you also have a chance to see that trickle down, where teams start to look for maybe like-minded or as far as similarly competitive teams. I think then that could be a great thing. Now, it's not going to be something where everyone gets on TV, but I do think that's kind of a cool thing that teams can do if they've got the team to get a little extra publicity. If they can end up on ESPN or one of the sports channels on cable, I think that's exciting. I'm for it.
All right, good. Okay, so let's see. Next question here. All right, so dear Dan, do you think the IHSA is evolving fast enough to keep up with not only today's high school, the high school environment, but today's high school athlete?
Probably not. I think if you asked any state association, they would say we want to, but it's like trying to turn around a barge, right? I think that there are processes in place where they can't react and adapt on a dime. They've got to go through a lot of different checks and processes along the way. They've got to have these processes checked to see if they make sense. They've got to look at potential outcomes of any decision they make, see what's fraught with disaster, and what are some of the unintended consequences. So I think the IHSA falls into that where, like I said, I think if you'd ask them, they would say, God, we'd love to make some of these changes right away. And I think they've gotten better. We've seen some of the changes that are pushed kind of by the public as far as, playoffs. And I'm thinking about football and, specifically, and some of the changes that were made right after the state playoffs last year. So I think they try to be very adaptable. However, I think it's a struggle for them. So I think they are currently kind of a step or two behind. But again, maybe that's how they want it. They might think that we don't want this to move this fast. We want to do whatever we can to slow the process down, let everyone take a breath, figure out what bad things can happen based on decisions that are made or some of the things that are in the atmosphere right now. And so while I think they'd like to be adaptable, I also think that there's probably some part of them that thinks, if we can be the force that pushes back against some of this NIL and transfers and things that seem to be happening so quickly, I don't think they think that's the worst thing in the world, but it does keep them a step behind.
Yeah. So do you think they're slow rolling it a bit just to try and maybe catch up, or not catch up, but more, think about it and be able to kind of put things in place or put things in perspective before they really have to make some kind of decision?
Yes, I do think that they might be slow rolling it. They could hope that there is some education and reform and some knowledge that gets out there about some of these issues that we've talked about a lot. That they think maybe some of this stuff can work itself out, without us having to do anything or do any legislation. But they're also kind of a quasi governmental body, and so government likes to move slow. It's designed to move slow, so things don't happen so fast. So I think they could be knowingly playing it slow, but I don't know. Maybe they don't think that deeply into it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
on to the next one. Hey, Joe, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Are any of these, do we have any listener or follower questions?
We do.
All right. Oh, good. Okay. And are we, if this segment is successful, is this something we want to have people submit questions for?
Oh, for sure. Yes. And we'll mention that later as well.
Okay.
But,
all right.
Yes, we do have some listener questions, and we also want people to weigh in on social media or at our email as far as, you can use mine or yours, Jay Frevoletti at varsityvoices.com or D Frevoletti at varsityvoices.com, and you could submit your questions. But you can also do that on any social media, and whether it's on X, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Instagram, and whether it's on YouTube, make a comment, submit a question, and we'll be sure to answer it at some point. So,
Awesome. Yeah, that'll be
yeah.
fun.
All right. So, Dan, dear Dan,
Yes.
if you're in charge of the Chicago Catholic League, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
What changes, if any, would you look at to improve the conference?
Something I've thought about a little bit is that I think that, I think teams can get stuck, and I think because of how the scheduling is, that the crossover games are what I'm thinking about specifically. So you've got some big division teams playing some small division teams regularly. And, I think that makes it really tough for some of those small division teams. It creates a huge advantage, I think, for some of the larger divisions and some of the perennial powerhouses. I would like to see, and I haven't talked this out, so I don't know, and what the downside is. I'm sure some schools would not like this, but rather than those interdivision games, we never get it right. Those games, I rather than having all 6 divisions play one another, I would like to see the top 3 largest schools, we'll call them. So if that's like blue, green, and orange, that their crossovers stay within those 3 groups, and that the white, purple, and red, that their crossovers stay within those 3 divisions. I don't know if that creates a scheduling nightmare. I haven't looked at it. I don't know how the 3 larger division teams would look at it. They do make adjustments to this conference. I do like the idea of promotion and relegation, so to speak, but I do think it would make it a little easier is the wrong word, but a little more competitive for some of these teams that are kind of stuck and are trying to get better, but then have to go play an upper division team and get blown out. And it feels like it sets your program back a year by a loss like that.
So, do you think it should be based on size of the school or success of the school?
Well, I think the division, how they form the divisions, is fine. I think they look at it every 2 years, and even yearly is it yearly? No, it's every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Yeah, that they bump schools up and down based on some of those factors you just mentioned: success, size, number of athletes in the football program. So I like that. I do. I think that's kind of a cool thing. I think they can make a bigger deal out of people that get, schools that get promoted. I think that would be kind of a cool thing, like they do in soccer in Europe. But I think that if you have divisions that are closer in size and success and number of students in the program, then I think those schools playing one another more often makes more sense for everybody. The downside, I'm thinking about it as I'm talking about it, Joe. The downside is that that there's going to be a group that is kind of the smallest school in the large school division, or the most successful school division, where they now would feel like all we do is play up, so they would feel like the red division feels now, that every crossover we have is with a bigger school that has a better history of success, and a better recent history of success and a more established program. And so I would guess that some schools might push back on something like this. If you lose, because we talk about playoff victories and number of wins needed to make the playoffs, I think that's what would stop that. But if I were commissioner of the CCL tomorrow, nice. that would be something I would look into right away. I also would drop the ESCC name too. I would just call it like we do, like we've kind of done. We call it all the CCL, the Chicago Catholic League, and so I would drop the ESCC from it. So that would be the first thing I do, and that's an easy one, right?
Right.
Yeah. Then I tackle the harder stuff,
Harder
like
stuff.
scheduling. Yes.
Okay.
It sounds like you're opening a dumpster to get.
It might be a dumpster.
Yeah.
But so that is a great lead in to our next question. And this is from one of our listeners, Dan, and this is
all right.
Natalie Hill. She's a parent of a player on St. Francis. And her question is, Dear Dan, wondering if the CCL will do anything to adjust the divisions based on success and teams, moving them up a class, or will they just keep adjusting it every 2 years as they do now?
It's a good question, Natalie. Thank you for the question. I originally was still coaching when this went into effect, and it was supposed to be an every 2-year thing. And I think the first year after they implemented it, they went back and changed it again. So it was done after 1 year. So I understand why Natalie would ask that question. I think they would like to settle into an every 2-year rotation with this. That being said, they have the ability to go and change it if they think something's out of whack. They might go back and change it. And that being said, you can mix it up so many ways, but there's always going to be, and I don't know if Natalie thinks it's fair or unfair, but there will always be those schools that feel like, we got a raw deal versus, we're in a great spot. I don't think any mixing of it in any sort of time frame, gets rid of that situation. I think you're always going to have that. I do think there are ways like our last question that you can make it a little more competitive. But I don't know if everyone would ever feel like, oh, these divisions are all perfect. Gosh, this is lined up exactly how we should. We should just lock it in and keep it here, because there will always be someone that's a team that's like, hey, we're really good, like St. Francis, or like IC or St. Ignatius. That's like, we've got, and none of those schools have said that to us or anywhere that we've got a raw deal. But, somewhere, some schools are always going to think that way. So I think they'd like to stay on a 2-year schedule, but that doesn't mean they can't change it if they think things are really out of balance.
Yeah. So follow up on that.
Okay.
So, right. Dear Dan, what if they were to create the divisions by seedings? Every 2 years, they would do seedings of the teams within the Chicago Catholic League. And, each division has how many teams? 4?
Yes. 6 groups of 4.
Yeah. So the top 4 seeds are particular division. The next 4 are the next division, and so on and so forth. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of how they try to do it now, but they look at some more factors other than like a power ranking, so they don't take the max preps or the Varsity Voices power rankings into account. They look at, and I could be wrong on this. And it could change. So they look at success over that 2-year period. So right now you look at division winners, they will have a division winner on their resume. So we could go through and figure out who that all is. But, they look at success, they look at size of school, and then they look at number of players in the program, which I think is that's kind of a unique thing, because you can have some big schools with small numbers. We've talked about this before, Joe. So yeah. Some schools that are highly successful struggle with numbers, and that has to be taken into account when you're putting these divisions together.
Okay.
What'd you find?
All right. So if you get to Dear Dan, I've got to start with Dear Dan, right? All right. So if you had the opportunity to rename one CCL football mascot, which one would you rename and what would it be?
Wow, you are getting me in trouble here.
I know. I thought about this and I thought there's so much history, right, in the Chicago Catholic League and the names behind, the schools and the teams. But I thought, you have to have thought about it. You've got to have some idea, like, you know what, this team would be better off named this.
I don't know about better, but there is one I've thought about that I would have assumed was a certain name, but it's not.
Okay.
When we started doing this and started doing the research, over a year ago for this, I was surprised that DePaul they were the Rams.
And not the Demons?
And not the Demons.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
same thing.
It just makes sense, right?
Yes.
It makes sense that they would be the Blue Demons, and
they don't even have to be the Blue Demons, just
right.
the Demons.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe they didn't want demons for some reason for, Catholic school. But I mean, DePaul is one of the largest universities in Catholic universities in the country. So, it hasn't seemed to bother them. I kind of felt like it would be a fit, and I assumed they were the Blue Demons before that. So I that would be the one that I would change just for continuity's sake.
All right.
Not because I don't like the Rams or and the other one that popped into my head just because it's hard to know you have to be told what it is or look it up is a Don, for Notre Dame.
Yes,
and so that one I wouldn't change because there is a ton of history there so I wouldn't want to mess with that. But
yeah, I feel bad. Yeah, that you're even bringing it up.
Right. But it's like how many like Irish mascots you've got, or Irish Catholic mascots, between St. Pat's and Providence and some of these Fenwick and all these, they run out of names, but Blue Demons is available, and
or Demons. Devils, right? Right.
You played for the Blue Devils, right? Back in the day?
Back in the day, 8th grade. I was 14.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And there's no affiliation there with the Downers Grove Blue Devils. How in the heck did they get that name?
I have no idea, but we liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it didn't turn you into an awful person, right?
It did not. Right?
Yeah.
I continued my Catholic education and everything went on from there.
In spite of playing for the Blue Devils. Yeah. You didn't want to turn, for away from Catholicism because you played for the Blue Devils.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good question. I like it, and I think we've got the perfect one in DePaul because there's not a ton of history. Now they just won a state championship. They've won a bunch in other sports, basketball, everything else. But that's a good one. That's the one I would change.
Yeah. The one thing I was thinking, I do not know this, Dan, is what was Gordon Tech's mascot name? Do you have any idea? Because I thought maybe DePaul could lean into that because they took over the campus, that kind of thing. So, but I have no idea. So don't feel like you got to answer that.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. No problem. All right, here we go. All right. So we all know, or most people know, that you coached for a long time at the high school level. How many years?
Let's see. I was
15?
There between 15 and 20. I had two different stints. Yeah. So one is a young guy, one is an older guy. So yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned one is a young guy, one is an older guy. And, you've talked about over the years, and I feel like you've got a bit of an old school tendency. So, dear Dan, if you could bring back one thing from old school high school football, what would it be?
I've got it.
All right, good.
All right. Yep. Popped into my head. I would bring back the Wednesday game after the playoffs are announced.
Sweet. I love that.
Yes. The Wednesday game from when we used to play was I thought that was the greatest thing as a little kid before I was in high school, because we would mom and dad would take me out of school and go watch you guys play, and
Yep.
and then as a player, and excuse me, I'm getting all choked up thinking about it.
It's so emotional.
One of our coaches used to say the greatest thing about the Wednesday game was that there was nothing else going on. There was no college football. There was nothing else happening. You had the attention of the entire state on that Wednesday. And so I thought it was really, really cool. I know why they probably went away from that, but if I could bring one thing back from old school high school football in Illinois, I bring back the Wednesday playoff game.
You know, I think that is a great choice. I really do, because you're right. I mean, the IHSA should bring that back, and they should really promote the heck out of it. You know, come up with some name for, you know, those Wednesday games as far as, you know, the first round of the playoffs, and tie it into Wednesday or whatever it might be, because, you know, it really was an event. Not like I'm not saying the current playoffs are not an event, but that was something which was a little bit unique, a little bit different, that I think, just like you and me, or you just said, that really resonated, makes a difference, is something that we remember.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right. It was really memorable. And, you know, I think the biggest thing is, like, you know, I like to go to college football games. So do other people. You might have tickets or season tickets. You're like, ugh, I really would like to go to this high school game, but I've got these tickets I paid for, or whatever it might be, or we're going out of town, or whatever. That Wednesday would have everyone's attention.
I agree. All right, dear Dan, if you had to create a high school football player from scratch using traits from movie characters, who would you pick? This is a tough one. This one I got to sprung on you. I agree. But I know you're quick and you can think of things. All right.
So, the first one, which we kind of reference a lot, is the Hulk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that would be that. You know what I always. Hulk! Yes. That's why right there. Yeah. That's the kind of player I want across the board. Give me 22 or 33 of those guys.
Yes.
And I think we're going to win. And you know what is different? What really seals the deal for me?
What
is when these Hulk movies started to come out, Joe, they made Hulk super fast, right? Mm-hmm. So he could run like the wind, and he could jump. And, you know, and I grew up on Lou Ferrigno's Hulk, you know, on TV in the 70s and early 80s. And he was kind of a slow moving, big, strong guy. Right. When Hulk came out and he could run like the wind and jump 60 miles at one point.
The animated Hulk.
Yes. Animated Hulk.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. That's where I go number one, you know. And if you had to break it down and you say, okay, Hulk could only be lineman, you know, there's a way in,
right. Yeah.
Right. I might want to choose like, I'm trying to get away from superheroes to think about who.
It's hard to get away from superheroes, but yeah. I agree. But can you think of any like movie character that's not a superhero? Think about the resilience of, you know, Tom Cruise in.
That's what I was thinking too.
All right,
Mission Impossible and those things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Super crafty. Be a real heady quarterback. You know,
MacGyver
would be a good one.
Yes. The guy who can, you know, make something out of his shoe and shoelaces. You know,
right.
Helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
He'd make a sling out of his shoelaces.
Right.
Lets him throw the ball 75 yards in the air.
Yeah, but it's hard not to think of a superhero. I agree. You know, I'm thinking of the Flash. It's like lined up, wide right, boom. He's in the end zone. You just launch it up there, and he's there already.
Right.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yes. Yes. You
All
could
right.
just snap and throw it as far as you can, and
Yes.
Flash is gonna win a lot of those one-on-one
He
matchups.
is going to. All right, good. All right, so dear Dan, what's the most overrated thing in high school football today? I'll give you a couple of different options. You
Okay,
may have
appreciate that. Yeah.
you know, 7 versus 7, social media hype, highlight tapes. Those are just three, and you can pick one of those, obviously, but you may have some others. But what do you think is the most overrated thing in high school football?
Yeah, and this may show my old school again, but I knew it before you gave me the examples. I appreciate it. 7-on-7 to me is incredibly overrated. I think it's not real football. You can leave with a really overvalued or inflated sense of confidence in your team based on some 7-on-7 stuff. I think we've experienced that before, Joe, personally, and without pressure on a quarterback, boy, they are really good. It's like me putting in the living room versus
Right.
out there for $1. If someone bets me $1 to sink a putt, I mean that's a big difference. And I just think that a lot gets made out of 7-on-7. The thing that I've seen, and what really gets me about it, is the injuries that I have seen happen in 7-on-7s that have really hurt your team. It was 90% wideouts, but
Yeah.
DBs too, from concussions to ankles to pulled hamstrings, and if you're looking at a 7-on-7 in mid to late July, I certainly would be like, not for me. And I'm a lot. I'm not a. I was big skill. I was not small skill.
Yeah.
So even though I played linebacker too, I didn't even like it back in the 80s when we did it. I think it's great for practice. I think it's great to do some things. I don't think there's much value at all with competitive 7-on-7.
All right. Okay. All right. So, dear Dan, and this is a really hard-hitting, important question.
Okay. All right. Yep. I'm prepared.
We're ending up on this one. Okay.
Okay. The last question of the night. Okay.
Last question. What would be your all-time favorite stadium food? And what would you like to see all the high school stadiums carry as far as food is concerned?
Wow. That arancini at Montini was next level.
Outstanding.
Yeah,
yes,
outstanding. That will be the one I want everyone to carry, but that's not my all-time favorite. I'm gonna go Homer on this, and the back in the day, the Bennett stands when we used to play at the field and play on Saturdays. One of the strongest memories I have is of Mr. Zork's bratwursts cooking on the grill,
yes,
during the game, and throughout the entire game, that smell was in the air of cooking bratwursts on the grill, and I thought it was amazing. And I don't know that I ate bratwurst anywhere other than that, but it was funny that the team, if we would be done, if they had some on the side left over, the game would be over for less than 30 seconds and we'd be running to get bratwurst. But Mr. Zork's brats were legendary. And Joe, it brings up a great point. I'd like to have more. Okay. I'd like
more brats,
more food, more food from these stadiums that we cover. I think that should be a goal of ours for the next year, is to try. And so you asked me this question a year from now, I've got about 18 that I can pull from.
And do you think you've gone out to each of the stadiums and you've sampled each of their food choices, so you can really make an assessment of how good the food is or not?
No, and I'm gonna ask for it right now. We need recommendations from our listeners. give us your vote on what you think we should eat and review for stadium food this
And
coming fall.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be at the stadium, right, Dan? I mean, we talked about in the past, we asked some of the coaches, if we were coming to your game and we were going to stop at a nearby restaurant, before the game and have a little something to eat, what would you recommend, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be good too. So either at the stadium, if there's something next level at the stadium, like the
Yes.
Montini Arancini.
Right.
I don't think I meant to rhyme that, but the Montini Arancini. It sounds nice. Rolls off the tongue.
It does. Yeah.
But that or something that we could stop on the way. So Joe, I think that should be a segment.
Me too.
Yeah. We're going to do a food review of the recommended, like the coach or players have to give us one place.
Yeah.
Their go-to.
Yeah, and say it again, Dan. Tell them we need people to weigh in, if it's coaches, players, parents, and let us know, where's the best food right by the stadium or at the stadium, right?
Yeah,
go ahead.
We have to put some limits on it. I don't want it to be like 8 miles away from the stadium.
So, Mr. Geography, how close does it need to be?
I would say within
2 miles?
2 miles.
All right.
Within 2 miles. Draw a circle around 2 miles.
Yeah, because it's got to be something that you can go, boom, pick up, and you're to the game within 5 minutes, right?
Right. Yes. I want to be able to take it away too. I don't want to necessarily have to sit out.
To sit down. I agree.
Right. Yes.
Okay. So you're eating those 5 minutes it takes you to drive from there to the game. You're eating it in the car as you're driving, right?
Yeah. And I eat fast enough that I can usually polish it off from the time I pick it up at the counter to the time I get to the car.
Yeah. The only thing that might take a little extra time is the fries or something, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And if there's some next level fries out there, I'm all for it. But I'm looking for like a main course, like a sandwich or a basket of something or
Yes.
Yeah.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah, and we're gonna make this a thing, Joe. We'll review them on the podcast.
All right,
maybe do it as we're eating it. Like we'll steal that bit from that struggling podcast, Barstool Sports.
Struggling,
right? Yes. Yeah. We'll steal their bit, really crush them. Yes.
I like it. All right, we're gonna do that. We need help. So people out
there,
listeners out there, comment, send us an email. I gave you the email address earlier. We're on social media everywhere. So send us a comment, send us an email, and let us know where we should go to eat and what we should get. And it could be close by restaurant within 2 miles or at the stadium. If you've got something great like the arancini at Montini, call that out as well, right?
Yeah. And don't forget, submit questions for the next Dear Dan or the version we're going to do when we ask Joe. We have to.
Joe knows.
Joe knows.
Joe knows. Yes.
Like Bo knows. I like it. I like that.
We're going to do that as well.
So Joe knows. Yeah. Submit your questions, please. We would love to have some listener feedback and questions. We want to thank Natalie Hill. Again. Hill again for submitting that question. We hope it was a decent answer. But we'll do the best we can.
Yeah. All right, good. So that's going to do it for this round of Dear Dan. As always, you heard it straight from the source, real takes, real talk, zero fluff, Dan. If you've got a question you want Dan to tackle next time, hit us up on social media. Drop it in the comments or email us at jfrevaletti@varsityvoices.com or dfrevaletti@varsityvoices.com. Until then, keep the questions coming, keep the conversation going, and remember, if you want it straight, just ask Dan. Thanks for listening to the Varsity Voices, and we will catch you next time.